So for the assets menu, let's look at actually creating some different assets. We'll go through and create one of each just so we can see how it functions. Now the first thing we want to do is create a folder. Now when I create that folder, I'll notice down my projects that I have a new folder that's created. If I hit F2 on the keyboard or just left click on the title of it, we can go ahead and rename it. So let's just call this one, let's say, our material. And for instance, we could place materials inside of this folder, we could place textures or whatever it might be that we need to, organize it the way we need to organize it for our game project. We might have additional folders. For instance, we'll make another folder. We'll call this one our scripts. And inside of here, we could have additional folders. For instance, we could have one that's going to be our, let's just say, for instance, our player. And then inside of that folder, you notice that I'm simply selecting, highlighting on that name, and as I highlight on it and create, it creates it as a child of that object. We could have this one as our, maybe our pickup, or maybe our editor type scripts. So depending on however you need to structure it, you have that ability to go in there and structure it. Now let's go ahead and create some additional assets. We'll go in, we've got folders created. Let's create a couple of script files. We'll do a JavaScript. When you create a brand new JavaScript, it's going to create as a new behavior script. And we can simply rename this one to, let's say, our player script. And let's make some additional assets in here, and then we're going to actually look at how we can organize it. So we'll do a C# script. We'll call this one our editor GUI script. And we'll create some additional ones. We have a boost script we can make, a shader script, a prefab. We'll go ahead and create a prefab here. So here's our prefab. This will be called our player prefab. Additional stuff we can create in here. We've got animation sequences we can do. We've got materials. So we'll make a material in here. So we'll call this our player material. And what else can we create in here? We've got lens flares we can do, a cube map, a render texture, a physical material. So we'll do a physics material. We'll call this one our ice material. Now these are all assets. These are actually being created inside of your project folder. So let's go ahead and go back up to our assets, and let's do show and explore. This time we're going to have a few more items inside of there because these are the things that we've been creating. So you can see we've got our player script, our JavaScript, we've got our player material, the ice physics material, so on and so forth. And these are the items that we've been creating here. We can see them inside of here. We see our material and our scripts folders that we created. So the thing to keep in mind here, this is just a folder. If we look at this, we've simply been creating items inside of a folder, and we've been creating folders to store things in and organize our project with. Now, you could go into your windows here and select and move things around inside of the Explorer. I would suggest against that because there's metadata that's tied to it, and you don't want to lose any of those connections. Your best bet is, if you're going to be organizing any of this information, is that you're going to work with your project view inside of Unity to do all of that reorganization. Now, one other thing that we're going to look at while we've got this open and going, we want to look at actually doing a couple of different things. Now, we haven't touched too much on the project view, but we're going to look at how we can use this project view in conjunction with the assets that we've been creating. Now, we've created a couple of different folders inside of here. Now, let's actually use some of these. Now, we've got some materials. By simply left-clicking and dragging, we can move those materials around, make them childs of different items here, or just drop them into folders. So with the material here, we're simply going to drop it into the material. It drops it into that folder. We could do our player material and drop it in there. We could take some of our script files, and we can add additional files to the selection by simply holding Control. And we'll just drop those down here into the scripts. And we drop them in there, and we say, well, wait a second, maybe we want to put it in the editor folder and in the player folder. And here we can see we've got the files inside of there. We've got the materials inside of here. And let's go ahead and create one more folder. We'll make a folder for our prefab. We'll do folder, and we'll do this one as our prefab. Now you notice that I had the script selected, so it actually made it a child of this one, but I really don't want it there. I want it back by itself. So I'm going to drag, left click, and let go, and it's simply going to drop it back inside of the project folder for me. And we can drag this player prefab and drop it in, so you can see how we can start to organize these things up. We could even make another folder for, let's say, our scenes. So we got a folder for our scenes, and we can move these two scenes inside of here. Now, Unity is going to handle all of the other stuff that happens in the background, retying any connections in that might happen. But if you do make specific spots in your script that are looking for a location, then you are going to have to be careful of how you move files around. And with that, we're going to do one last thing to showcase our select dependencies. I want to make sure that we see how this works. We're going to have to do something we haven't quite done yet before, so you can try it along with me, but we're going to be applying a material to an object. So we're going to take our player material, we're going to drag it and drop it on top of that box. Now when we did that, we assign that material to that object. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take our cube, we're going to drag our cube and we're going to drop it on top of our player prefab. Now these are some things we haven't gone over yet, but there's something that we need to do so that we can showcase how the dependencies actually work inside of the game. So here we've created a player prefab with a dependency, and let's go ahead and just drag our script and drop it on there. So now we have this component. We've got this object that has some things on it. And what we want to do is we want to save this out as a package and export it out. But we want to be able to select what are the dependencies, what's associated with this game object. So I'm going to do select dependencies. And when I do, it automatically selects that player script we assigned to it and that material that we assigned to it. That we know what we've got with it. So let's say I go back up to my assets, I go to my export package, and in my export package I've got those three items selected. I do export. We'll find a spot to drop it. We'll call it our player. We'll save that out. It's going to be saving all that information that's associated with it. Points it to us right there. Now let's say we went in here and we deleted those items from our project. Now this goes pink simply because we don't have the material in there anymore. Now we're going to go back to our assets. We're going to do import package, and then we're going to and we find that package that we had. It's going to be our player. We're going to open that up. It's going to decompress. It's going to ask what do I want to take from that package. And I'm going to say everything there. We'll say import. It's going to import it back in. It drops it into these specific folders as well, because that's where they were pulled from. And from there we're able to import export packages, and we're able to find and select the dependencies associated with those packages that we're going to be working with. That's going to do it for the assets.